Hey, folks, welcome. I hope you're having a fantabulous Thursday so far, and I have a fair degree of confidence that you're looking forward to the weekend. I don't know, that's not always the case, right? But hey, it's a safe bet. Before we get started, I want to do our regular housekeeping. So do me a favor, let me know if you can see and hear me okay. I just sent a message in our chat room in case you can't see or hear me asking if you can. Ash says you can, so we are good to go. Excellent, excellent. Okay. So, Daniela, great to have you aboard. Yasmin, awesome. We're getting folks. Shalise, great, 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 great. Then we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to continue our discussion of cultural differences. This is, part two. Today we're going to really focus on cultural differences as they pertain to the workplace. Now, in Tuesday's lecture, and if you weren't here for Tuesday's lecture, I think you all were, but in case you want to review it, it's there available for you. We talked about cultural differences in general, right? The values and the social norms and the mores that go into it, how different cultures perceive time versus relationships, how they communicate, high context, low context, all that good stuff, right? So that's big picture. But now what I want to do is I want to get into the workplace a little bit because after all, this is international business. You will be putting together business proposals to take a product or service overseas. Hey, Nicole. So I want to make sure that you have this information. The information that we discussed today will probably be helpful in your paper when you talk about human resources and staffing. Okay, so with that in mind, let's jump in. There are different approaches that companies will take when figuring out how to go global, how to go international. We're going to talk about three approaches that are all along the same scale, continuum, spectrum, if you will. The first one is called ethnocentric. And ethnocentric, as it says here, it basically says a company fills all key positions with parent company nationals. So let's say, for example, that we are a US company and we are going to do business in Costa Rica. I like Costa Rica. I worked there once and it was nice, really nice. Actually, it was a horrible, horrible rainstorm, like massive, and I couldn't really do much, but it was beautiful anyway. I digress. So we're a US company and we want to do business in Costa Rica. So following an ethnocentric approach, we would go ahead and staff that place with, all the key management positions with Americans. We would find Americans here in the US, train them, they would be our people, probably people who have been with us internally for a good long while. And then once they're all set and so forth, we'd ship them overseas and do an expat assignment. We're going to talk about expats toward the end of this lecture series. And they'd go ahead and work the site there in Costa Rica. There are some pros and cons to this ethnocentric approach. First of all, the pros, these folks could very well fill skills gaps in that other country, especially if we're providing a product or service. Hey, Alma, if we're providing a product or service that is highly unique and very niche, they may not have the skills necessary to, provide that in Costa Rica, so we can fill those skills gaps. We can also help transfer core competencies to that host country. So as we're out there filling these skills gaps, we can train them and we can provide core competencies that this area may not have. It also really helps maintain a unified culture. And we're talking a corporate culture. And corporate cultures are very, very, very important, and in many ways can be a strong differentiator from the competition. So, by maintaining a strong corporate culture, that means that no matter where we are, the DNA of that corporate culture, the values and the mission and the objectives that it sets is clear in all of our international sites. However, ethnocentric approach has some severe cons. Produces resentment in the host country. Well, yeah. I mean, it's this paternal feeling that, hold on, you're coming here to our country because you see market potential, you see opportunity, you love it here, so on and so forth, and yet you treat us like we can't manage ourselves? That's not cool, man. Can lead to cultural myopia, meaning our way is the only way. It's the best way. It's the American way. The only way that anybody should do it is our way. That's really not cool. And so there's not only this resentment, but then this idea that Costa Rica has nothing to offer us. The way your culture works, the way you do business, the way you interact with your customers, pshaw. We don't need that insight because we're Americans and we do it the best way. Not good. Generally speaking, the ethnocentric approach is not desirable. I'm not saying it's not still used, and I'm not saying that it cannot be successful, but in general, it's kind of seen as backwater, sort of the cultural imperialism aspect of the past. Nevertheless, some try to do it. There's a famous case study, and I invite you to Google this. It's a New York Times video on how Walmart tried to go into Germany and failed utterly. Now, Alma is saying that there's a documentary of Chinese company building a manufacturing plant in Detroit has this approach. Disaster. Okay, Alma, no, hold on. We got to reset these. I apologize. Okay, so Alma, fantastic, awesome comment, and that's a real world example. So I'm actually going to look that one up. I'll see if I can find that. In the meantime, you guys can look for that. Maybe, Alma, if you could do us a favor and maybe send it out in Canvas or somehow or another in the comments here, say, well, Google this term and you'll find it. That would be great. If you guys, thank you, Alma. If you guys Google New York Times, Walmart, business, Germany, and maybe cheddar, because it's a cheddar program, there's a great case study of Walmart going into Germany, and Walmart got its butt handed to it, got totally kicked it out. Hey, Joel, how's it going? So, as it said in this little documentary, Walmart's experience in Germany, where it lost hundreds of millions of dollars since 1998, has become sort of a template for how not to expand in a country. Some of Walmart's problems stem from hubris, a uniquely powerful American enterprise trying to impose its values on the world. This is quintessential ethnocentrism, okay? Walmart goes into Germany and says, we're Walmart. We can do no wrong. We're the world's largest. We're the biggest employer. We know what to do. And Germans are like, okay, well, this is a little different here in Germany. And, let us help you out. And they're like, oh, talk to the hand. We're in so many countries, we've lost count. And we're successful everywhere. If we can be successful there, we can be successful in Germany. Run along, little Germans. Bad idea. Really bad. Okay? So that's ethnocentrism. Well, then there's another approach called polycentric approach, polycentrism. Polycentrism, much better, much better. A company requires its host country nationals to manage subsidiaries while parent company nationals occupy key positions at corporate headquarters. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means, all right, we run this company, we have this company, you know, International Business Incorporated here in the US, and we're going to Costa Rica. We're still going to kind of run the company in general from here in the US, but when it comes to Costa Rica, we're going to find the very best managers to manage that subsidiary in Costa Rica. Costa Ricans managing a Costa Rica subsidiaries run by Costa Ricans. Okay. We're running the big picture from here in the US. It's a US company after all, but we make sure that the host country nationals, these guys right here, they manage the subsidiaries. All right. Pros: reduces the cultural myopia, right? Myopia. It reduces the cultural sort of myopia because now we have Costa Ricans bringing their own personal flair, their own cultural views, their own approaches, their own best known methods to the table there in Costa Rica. So they're not just saying, oh, the American way is the only way. They're kind of like, yeah, we kind of know what we're doing here in Central America as well, and we're going to bring that to the party. Also, there's less expensive implementation than ethnocentric approach, because with ethnocentric approach, we got to get all these high-trained Americans and we got to ship them to Costa Rica. Well, that's expensive, right? That's really expensive. Trust me on this. So if we just leave the Americans here and hire the best Costa Ricans we can find over there to manage it, we're not paying expats, we're not paying travel, we're not doing extra money for this, we're not insurance. It's a lot cheaper. There are cons, though. Produces resentment if lower managers have low career mobility. Okay, let me explain this. So we've got Costa Ricans kicking butt and taking names over in Costa Rica running the subsidiary, right? And they're doing a great job. However, if we have set in our mind that, well, the only thing you're good for is managing Costa Ricans, well, then their careers are going to kind of top out. As soon as you're running the subsidiary in Costa Rica, you can't really go anywhere beyond that. And so there can be some resentment there. They want to continue to move up in a company. But if we're fixated on the idea that Costa Ricans run in Costa Rica, that gets in the way. Also, isolates foreign subsidiaries from corporate headquarters. This one's big. You know, having worked for a multinational company like Intel and having worked overseas for Intel and worked with many countries with them, I know for a fact that if you work Intel in California or Oregon, where Intel is huge, you're on the inside. You are where the action is happening. But if you work Intel in Utah, where we have 50 employees, you're a redheaded stepchild. You're on the outside. You're not really with the in team. Well, multiply that by 100 if you're one of 12 employees in Singapore. Okay, I used to work with our Singapore employees quite a bit, and we had 12 employees in Singapore. They felt so alone. They felt completely invisible, completely unappreciated, and completely without a voice when it came to where all the action was going down in California and Oregon. So this creates a problem with the polycentric approach. But then we have a third approach. Yeah, that's 3. That's the geocentric approach. The geocentric approach is a company simply seeks the very best way to fill key positions across the entire organization, regardless of nationality. Put another way, we just move talent wherever we need the talent. I don't care what your passport says. If you have these skills and we don't need them in this country, but we need them in this country, we will move you. All right, we're going to move people all over the world based on the skill sets they have and the skill sets that we need. Now, Intel followed a geocentric approach. And it was really interesting because what this meant, and I'm not exaggerating, you could walk into any Intel campus. If you were dropped from a helicopter with a blindfold, dropped and, put in any Intel campus, and you did not know what country you were in, just by walking around the campus, you would not be able to figure out what country you were in. Because every Intel campus had Americans, had English, had folks from India, had folks from Asia and Israel, everywhere, every single campus, because Intel would just simply move the talent they needed to where it was needed. And so you would get this really interesting thing where an American company, Intel, moves an Israeli from Jerusalem to manage a team in Malaysia. Okay? So that is geocentric approach. A lot of pros and cons, though. Pros: uses human resources efficiently, totally gets the right people to the right place. Nicole says the company I used to work for had a parent company in Taiwan. They transferred employees back and forth all the time. Great example. It's also real world, and we've had 2 contributors. Should have had that earlier. So very good. Oh man, Nicole, great. Great example. Great example. So uses human resources efficiently, builds a strong corporate culture because now it's a multinational culture. No myopia at all. Everybody sees everything. It's really cool. And helps to build informal management networks, right? So everybody knows everybody, and you can build these networks. And by the way, your career knows no ceiling. You can go anywhere. If you're willing to move for the company, you can do anything you want with your career. All right, very true. There are cons. Immigration laws can be complicated, right? Here in the US, we have an H-1B visa to move technical talent around. Some countries will allow you to move talent about. Other countries won't allow you to move talent about. Some countries do not. So for example, and he didn't work in Malaysia. The American company with Israeli employee, he actually went to India to manage a team, not Malaysia. He would not have been allowed to go to Malaysia because Malaysia and Israel do not recognize each other as countries. Therefore, you're not allowed to travel back and forth from those countries. He was in India managing a team. So that gets kind of complicated. Furthermore, it's really expensive. I mean, really expensive. If you're going to move talent about like that all the time, that takes some serious coinage. So that's a disadvantage. Nevertheless, I totally adore this approach. This is my approach. I love it. I absolutely love it. So Daniela, in Mexico, there's a German company that sends employees to Germany to get trained instead of coming to Mexico. Okay, good polycentric approach. That's a great real-world example. Shalise, new contributor, says, our company laid us off, but before our end date, had some managers go overseas to train new call center, took the jobs and so forth. The irony, it really is ironic. You know, Intel did the same thing. I went to Malaysia to train my replacements. Other people went to Costa Rica, coincidentally, to train their replacements. Yeah, totally ironic. But it's a global economy, and Mexicans, Costa Ricans, and Malaysians have as much right to work and feed their families as Americans, especially when it comes to multinational companies. It's not my job. It's a job that this company needs done, and they have contracted with me to do it. And as soon as somebody else can do it better, faster, cheaper, they have an obligation to contract with them to do it. That's why we're in school, so that we're always valuable. All right? Good work. Okay, so these are the three approaches. Now, in all of these approaches, you're going to encounter culture shock. All right? Culture shock is real. I mean, it's I'm going to come back to this. It's really, yeah, there we go. It's really real. Really real culture shock. Oh my gosh. So I am going to share one of my experiences in detail. Culture shock is hard. It's ugly. It doesn't paint us in the best possible light. And yet it is a standard, regular psychological mechanism. Culture shock always happens. The question is not, will it happen? The question is, how will you respond when it does happen? So I'll give you one of my examples and so forth, but I want to give you this opportunity to tell me about a time, just very high level, right? Tell me about a time where you experienced culture shock. And yes, by the way, if you moved from state to state, there is a different culture from state to state. If you move from California, Utah, or New York to Utah and so forth, there are differences in culture. So let me see what experiences you guys have had with culture shock. Okay, let's come back and take a look at a couple of these. By the way, Shalise, I appreciate your comment there that this perspective could have been valuable during that time. I appreciate that. So real world example, awesome comment. All right, so let's take a look at some of these. All right, so Shalise moved from Fargo, North Dakota. Yeah, I can imagine that's pretty darn different. I totally get that. Let's see. So Joa moved from Florida, right? Fantastic. And then Ren, going from high school to college. Yeah, it's really true, right? It's really true. Any kind of big jump in there, there is a different culture and aspect around it. First of all, I come from Brazil, and that was a rude difference. You know what? I like the way you put it, a rude difference. Yeah, it's really, really tough in many cases. So yeah, we're going to talk through this in detail. Nicole, let's see. With my last company, there were a lot of culture shocks since the parent company was in Taiwan. consistently having to explain why we couldn't do things the same way, certain ways. Yes. Yes, Nicole. Classic culture shock at a business level. So Yasmin, we have Yasmin with us, contributing, moving to Utah after in San Jose, California. The people and everything is so different. Yeah, Yasmin. So I grew up in San Jose and Palo Alto, California. So Utah was different for me. Yeah. So then we have Ash, which is going to be number 10. Give me a moment. So Ash says, I moved to Utah, from Utah to Chicago in high school. And boy, they did things different. I love the differences from everyone saying bless you if someone sneezed because, oh my God, I was so polite. I love it. I love it. And by the way, congratulations. We got 10 good, solid comments. Keep bringing them in. That means that you guys are going to send me an email that says 10, 25, 10. 10, 25, 10. I'll put it right here. 10, 25, 10. You send me that email and we'll reward your contributions here. So let's see. We have Ash, Daniela, right? Fantastic. And that is a new contributor right there. When I first got here to the U.S., it was interesting for me because there was so much diversity all over the world. Yes, Alma moved from California to Utah when I was a kid. Everyone used words that were considered swear words. Everybody seemed to have, seemed to be white, and my family interracial. Classic career, culture shock experiences. And by the way, I am going to give us that one more contributor because we only have 8 people in class. Therefore, there's no way you can get 10 contributors. However, you're doing really well. This is great. So I want to give you that credit. So we're going to add a little something to things here. Okay, so let's keep going with this. Really good example. All right, so culture shock is real, my friends. It's absolutely real. It's going to happen. It's just going to happen. You cannot avoid culture shock. However, you can control how you respond to it. So we are going to kind of talk through the process here. To do that, I'm going to tell you a story of when I traveled to India. Now, in some countries, my culture shock was like minimal. It's like, I'm fine with this country. It's great. For some reason, I did not experience a lot of culture shock in Malaysia. I did not experience a lot in Israel when I was there. I experienced severe culture shock in India. Okay, so I go to India, and here's the thing. We expect everybody to be like us. Now, I know that consciously we don't like that thought and that we know that not everybody's like us. What do you mean I expect everyone to be like me? That's not true. I know everybody's different. Yeah. I know you know. But the way we're wired and the way we engage with our environment means that we need people to be like us so that we can have these norms in place to kind of run society, right? So, we need everybody to adhere to certain norms and values so that we can all get along swimmingly. However, the truth is, people are not like us. And therefore, a cultural divide occurs. All right? So, I'm in Israel. No, not Israel. This one was India. I'm in India, and I want to buy a sari for my daughter. All right? She was this big at the time. Went to buy a sari. You know the sari, those really beautiful, gorgeous dresses that the women in India wear. It's kind of like a big, massive scarf that turns into a dress. They're great. They're amazing. Chile, South Africa. Yes, very different. So I want to go buy a sari. So I go into a department store. And right there at the department store, somebody says, "Hello, can I help you?" Well, we know what that is, right? You know, it's like the Walmart greeter or somebody when you walk into a store, "Hey, can I help you find anything?" That's normal. I get it. It's fine. So I say, "Yeah, I'm here to, I want to buy a sari for my daughter." And this person takes me by the hand, which is a little awkward for me. Americans, by and large, are not touchy-feely people. We don't hold hands like that. And I especially don't like to be touched. I'm no touchy, okay? So he takes me by the hand, which really I do not like, but he guides me along and takes me maybe 30 feet to somebody else. And this person says, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here. I want to buy a sari for my daughter." And this person takes me by the hand, all right, and then takes me to the bottom of an escalator. And at the bottom of the escalator, somebody is waiting. "Hello, can I help you?" "Yeah, I'm looking for a sari for my daughter." He takes me up the escalator. Waiting at the top of the escalator is a person. "Can I help you?" "Yes, I'm looking for a..." This person takes me to the women's department. I'm then handed off to somebody else who takes me to the children's department of that women's department, who hands me off to somebody else. That person takes me over to the saris, picks a sari off the rack and says, "How about this?" By this stage, I'll take anything. They could hand me a burlap sack for all it matters. I'm just kind of freaking out. Now, by the way, the one that they actually held up and offered me, it was gorgeous. So I actually scored there. Completely wrong size, but it was gorgeous. So it was fine, right? But there's a cultural divide happening. And then they take me back down to the cashier, person by person by person. And then at the cashier, my friends, I pull out my debit card. I do not hand the debit card to the cashier. I hand the debit card to the person next to me, who hands it to the cashier. The cashier runs it, hands the debit card to the person, who then hands it back to me. All right. A cultural divide is definitely occurring. All right. And when a cultural divide occurs, this causes an emotional response. Okay. All of this is normal. All of this is standard psychological mechanisms. All of this is forgivable. These emotional responses lead to anger or fear or disrespect, who knows what, right? Well, for me, I was feeling totally disorientated, right? I didn't know what was happening. I was the only person in this store. The store was utterly empty, and it was a huge department store. I was very uncomfortable. I felt very unwelcome. I felt like I was being watched and corralled and pretty much pushed out the door as quickly as possible. I did not get any sense of customer service at all. It was like so much customer service that there was no customer service, right? And I was like, I am never walking into another store here in India ever again. It really wigged me out. Okay, well now, at this stage, these steps, they're inevitable. But now we have two choices. We can go down two paths. We've got the right path and we've got the wrong path. Let's first discuss what happens when we go down the wrong path. We create false attribution about their behavior. What does that mean? It means we will make up stories to try to explain that behavior. We don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It makes no sense to us. We never do it like that. We would never think of doing it like that. I have no understanding of why you do it. However, we don't like not knowing. We don't like understanding. And so when we don't know something, we will make crap up. And the stuff we make up is normally not kind. So we make up false attributions. We make up reasons why we think they're doing it. So the false attributions I made up: I'm not welcome here. This store is poorly managed. It is not efficient in any way, shape, or form. I'm probably the only American that has ever walked in there. They don't like Americans. And these are the reasons I'm making up in my head of why they're doing it. Now, the thing is, these things normally cause us to create a great deal of, disrespect for the people. The reasons that we've heard in other cultures is like, well, they're kind of a backwards people. They're a dirty people. And well, they're not very well educated. You know what? They're all criminals, right? Or they're all pretty sketchy. These are the false attributions that we make up. And when you make up false attributions like that, you totally discount them as people. They're not people. They're criminals. They're not people. They're dirty, right? They kind of live. Do you realize that they live in the same barn as their animals? It's disgusting. And therefore, we withdraw from engagement. I don't need to engage with you because you're not really civilized. You're part of that sort of third world. And, I'll give money to charity for you, but I'm not going to engage with you because you're too different. Well, I got news for you. That's really bad. And so we don't talk to each other. We don't communicate. We don't engage. And we don't solve problems. And we're all running around with these false attributions in our head. Okay? Please don't go down this track. So let's talk about the track we do want to go down. Well, first of all, you want to become aware of your reaction. You're feeling anger, fear, disrespect. I was feeling anger. Well, not so much anger as much as kind of this haughty, ethnocentric view of you're not very efficient. You clearly don't know how to run this place. Obviously, this is why it's empty. I was feeling fear. I didn't like being watched constantly and having my hand held. It's like, back off, right? Disrespect, yeah, you won't leave me alone. You're not treating me like a customer. You're shooing me out. Well, I was very aware of these feelings, very aware of them, okay? So you become aware of the feelings. And then you reflect on the causes. Why am I feeling this? Well, I'm feeling this because I was not allowed to just kind of browse and look at things. All right, Lon, you're used to browsing, but maybe from their perspective, it would have been a sign of disrespect to you to let you just wander around on your own because you're lost and you're an American and you don't know what's going on and maybe you need some help and support. Have you ever thought about that? No? Okay. I didn't like the way they held my hand. All right, well, Lon, look around. Everybody's holding their hand here. This, just because you don't like to have your hand held, and you're even extreme by American cases. So if you don't like it when an American touches you, this isn't India. This isn't because you're in India. This is you. This is your problem. So I'm reflecting on the causes. And then I kind of chill out, reflect on the causes. But now watch this. Let the feeling subside. Observe and decode the cultural differences in the situation. Okay, so now we got to actually look around, see what's happening, and decode it. And furthermore, talk to people who know. So, like the 2 days after this experience, I'm having dinner with my Israeli friend. He and his family live in live in India. He's managing a team in India. And I'm having dinner over at his place. And I tell him about this experience. And He says, well, you know why they do that, don't you? No. Why do they do it? He says, listen, there are over 1.5 billion Indians. 1.5 billion people. Now, to give you some context, here in the United States, we have about 300 million. 300 million, which means there are 4 or 5 more Indians than there are Americans. All right. Well, now, our unemployment rate before COVID was around 3%. That means that out of 300 million Americans, about 3% were unemployed. Well, now, if you could only employ 300 million, which is how many Americans there are, only 300 million Indians, then that means their unemployment rate would be something like 75%. They're not interested in efficiency to reduce employment. They're interested in creating jobs. They've got 1.5 billion people that they need to employ. And you're not going to employ 1.5 billion people by using the same practices where we do here in the US, where we try to be efficient and hire as few people as possible. So they will actually create work, make work, right? So yeah, you don't need that many people to run a department store, but you need that many people to employ them. And that was a big aha to me, a big aha. All right. Alma, you say, when I visited a lot of Vietnamese homes with my husband, lots of blunt comments about my appearance. Thought they were rude, but first I realized it was really showing they cared for me and my health, right? I mean, okay, great real world example. Great real world example. And so, yeah, Alma, it was a huge revelation to me. So now I totally see why they had 18 people there and why they were all so eager to help me. Because they were bored. Oh my gosh, they were bored. And so finally this customer comes in and they're like, all right, next 10 minutes, I'm set. This is awesome. Okay. Well, now this allows us then to develop a set of culturally appropriate expectations. From that moment on, I said, okay, I now know what to expect from this culture. I have a set of culturally appropriate expectations. So now when I walk into a store, I know what to expect and I know why to expect it. And in fact, I can have respect for why they do it the way they do. You've got to admire a culture who says we are more interested in creating jobs for people than we are in automating jobs and firing them. Capitalism and efficiency says create more robots, create more computers, automate more jobs, and lay off people. Whereas India says, we don't do the computers, we don't do the automation, we don't do all that. We want to hire people. You got to respect that. And so ultimately, I was able to create a set of culturally appropriate expectations and respect where they were coming from. And so, yes, I started going into stores again, and it was great. They always treated me like I was rich, and that made me uncomfortable, right? But, you know, I came to terms with it. Ash says, I had some culture shock when I met my husband's family just from Peru. Initially, I felt insecure because I couldn't speak Spanish fluently, but I absolutely loved them and you know, and love them to pieces and their food. Yes. Okay. Great real world example. And yeah, you kind of feel like the usurper, the outsider, and that's a part of culture shock. Excellent, Ash. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so, folks, there you go. There's a quick rundown of how different companies can approach staffing global centers, right? The ethnocentric, polycentric, and the geocentric approach, as well as how to deal with culture shock. Now, for your papers, you definitely want to think about these three approaches, the ethnocentric, the polycentric, and the geocentric approaches, when you figure out, well, now how am I going to get this product or service overseas, and how am I going to run this? Okay. Furthermore, when you start talking about HR and staffing and training employees, you'll want to maybe talk about, hey, we ought to offer some training on culture shock and cultural, awareness and so forth. So you'll want to put some lines in your proposals along those ends. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick around for a few minutes in case you have any specific questions or need any clarification. Otherwise, we are all set, and we will talk to you again on Tuesday. All right? Have a fantastic rest of the week and weekend. We'll see ya.